All right, bring us in, Mike. Actually, no, it's a Mike episode.
Yeah,
he doesn't take us in. I take us in. Oops. Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 105 of I Wish You Were Dead, a podcast about things that used to be alive. My name is Gavin, that is Mike, and that is Fia. And even before we started this episode, I also forgot that on Mike episodes, I bring us in. So if you're hearing my voice now, that means we're having a Mike episode. All episodes that end in 5 are, of course, a Mike Takes the Wheel episode. This time, I believe Mike Takes the Wheel Volume 9, which is pretty exciting.
It's super exciting. I do love how when you are the one bringing us in, you try to emulate my cadence with the "Hello, everybody." It is a nice attempt to keep the rhythm, and I think you do a good job at it.
I agree.
Why, thank you. I appreciate it. So yeah, I'm excited. I have no idea what Mike's going to throw at us. As
Never
I
do.
Never do. I never do.
Right.
And every now and then, Mike is kind enough to put it in our shared Google Doc.
Didn't do it this time.
Today was not one of those times. So I don't even know the topic. So you all are just as informed. Actually, you're more informed than I am because you will have seen the title.
True.
I have no idea what the title is yet. So Mike, just a quick one-liner. What is the topic today?
Mistakes, whoops-a-daisies.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
Can that be the name?
I like it.
Whoopsie daisies.
Yeah.
Mistakes, semicolon, whoopsie daisies.
Yes.
Exactly. Episode 105. Whoops.
All right.
I'll explain what that means as we go.
Yeah.
All right. With that little teaser out of the way, Fia, do you have some housekeeping to do?
I do. And also, I just would like to say hello, everybody. I'm back again.
Oh, yeah.
I've been gone for a little bit, but now I'm back.
Wait, Fia was gone?
Okay, Mike.
No, we definitely missed having our wonderful third co-host on the show, but you had a much-deserved break. You got to see some family, so that's always fun.
I did, yeah.
Yep. But we're happy to have you back.
Yeah. So just a reminder, guys, to don't forget to rate our show on whatever platform you listen to, and to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Give us feedback about the show and any future topics you'd like to hear on the podcast. And if you would like to be a guest on the show, be sure to fill out our guest form, and all of this can be found in the show notes. For next week, Gavin, what is going to be our topic?
We're going to be talking about a super weird group of animals that, depending on how you define it, aren't even animals, which is real weird. We're going to be talking about sponges. And at the start of this recording, I said, "Are you ready, kids?"
Aye,
and Mike
Captain.
correctly replied, "Aye, Captain."
Despite not knowing the topic for next week. So that was just...
No, he had no idea.
That was just being in sync. That was two co-hosts that are just in lockstep with each other.
Yeah.
So, next week we're going to be talking about sponges.
I am very excited.
And, they're a weird group.
Oh, yeah.
So we're going to be in for a ride. But yeah, so before we get into Swamp Corner with Fia, I don't have any paleontology news, but I would like to give a quick shout out to another paleontology podcast, PaleoCast. You might have heard us mention them a little bit in that I made a YouTube video for their YouTube gaming channel a couple weeks ago. But they actually just gave us a shout out on their podcast. I recorded a little intro blurb introducing the show to their listeners. So if any of you came over from PaleoCast, hello.
Yeah, thank you very much. And for those of you that want to check it out, we'll make sure to put that link in the description.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And the episode, it actually just came out today at the day we're recording this, but a week ago at the time you're hearing this. And it was really cool. The host, Dave Marshall, he, PaleoCast is a big enough podcast that he knows a lot of researchers and a lot of researchers know him. And so he posted a 2-part episode about some research that was just also published in Nature today. So he was sort of on the breaking news of this really cool super early amphibian paper that sort of shakes up a couple things about how we understand amphibians. So Really cool stuff going on PaleoCast, and we appreciate them shouting us out.
Yeah, awesome.
So with that, Fia, what is going on down in the swamp?
Yeah, so not too much has been going down in the swamp. It's cold here, so a lot of things are low
Okay,
in
first
abundance.
off, Fia, you know we love you, but
How cold?
Shut up.
Yeah, what is swamp cold?
It's so chilly here. It's like it's gotten down into the 30s and 40s.
Oh no, I need sleeves.
Yes. It's currently in the 50s here right now.
Oh,
But
currently in the 50s.
yes.
I don't even know what that temperature.
That's
I didn't know
golf
they
weather.
made temperatures up that
Beach
high.
weather.
Well, it's cold here and it's wet and cold at the same time.
Fia, you're from here. Like you should be like, hardened at this point. Like 50 degrees should be balmy weather for you.
No.
You're getting soft down there.
I have never been.
I like just the quiet no.
I do enjoy how Fia was gone for 2 or 3 weeks, and we just immediately start bullying her as soon as she comes back.
Thanks.
As friends do.
Glad to be back. But yeah, so I just finished my last sampling event ever for my master's thesis, which is a big step for me. And with that,
Nice.
I've been looking at some of the community samples, and I have found some really cool fish that I have not found yet in my samples, and that is the Gulf killifish, Fungulus grandis. They're also known as top minnows, so a lot of you are probably more familiar with the top minnow species. But it's one of the largest members of the killifish, and they're preyed upon in the swamp area by many fish like flounder, trout, and red drum. The word fungulus derives from Latin meaning bottom and grandis meaning large. So bottom large.
They got a big bottom.
Unfortunately, no, that's not really what it means. I think they're more of
Paging Sir Mix-a-Lot.
Please.
You know what also lives in swamps?
What?
Anacondas. Moving on.
They're found kind of on the bottom of the water column, and they're the largest member of the killifish, so that checks out. But
gotcha.
They're native to the Gulf of Mexico, from Texas to Florida, the eastern coast of Florida, Caribbean Sea, Atlantic Ocean. They're kind of a very versatile organism in that aspect. I think they've also been found in Cuba, but that's not confirmed. Anyway, these guys prefer grassy beds, canals with nearby fresh water. I would also like to add that they also can be found in oyster reefs, because that is where I found like dozens of them in my samples.
Okay.
But yeah, they feed on small crustaceans and other inverts. Some things that are kind of threatening them are changes in salinity, changes in temperature, and toxic events such as the hypoxia dead zone, which is when there's not enough oxygen in the water. And that is especially important in Louisiana because of the Deepwater Horizon oil spill, and then the annual hypoxic events that are occurring in the Gulf.
Right.
But yeah, the Gulf killifish is being used to test effects of oil and oil dispersants on the physiology of the species, and kind of how they're being affected by oil, to see for long term if that's going to be some major changes in the ecosystem.
Did you say this was part of your master's thesis?
Not all of this stuff. It's just that I'm looking at what is living on the oyster reefs, and it just so happens that apparently in the wintertime, they all like to come on the oyster reefs at my site.
Okay.
I have not seen a single killifish in any of my samples in the spring, summer, or fall. It just, now's the time for them. And I'm assuming once I get into some more life history traits, something I want to look out for is if the killifish will burrow during cold weathers, because when I pulled my samples out, it was during like a colder snap, so it's in the 30s.
Okay.
Yeah.
Neat.
Yeah.
And potential spoilers for the people studying, the oil, how the oil affects them. Probably not great.
Yeah.
Uh,
But you know,
probably not helpful.
yeah.
Uh, if I had to guess, I'm not a betting person, but probably not good.
Yeah. But
It's a
yeah, that's
solid
what I
guess.
have for you.
Awesome.
Awesome, thank you, Fia. And with all of our intro show stuff said and done, what are these mistakes, Mike? What are these whoopsie daisies?
So, a question for both of you guys.
Sure.
Yep.
If you had to pick the most most flagrant, most bombastic, the coolest way to die, how would you pick?
Oh.
You're like, what would you say?
Skydiving.
Being eaten by a whale.
Skydiving, being eaten by a whale. Okay. So neither of you guys got what I was trying to put down here. I didn't expect that. So let me follow this up here.
Okay.
I wanna nudge this a little bit closer to what I'm talking about here. If you had to
Thank
pick
you.
a society-wide catastrophe, what would be like the coolest, like most flashy society-wide kind of catastrophe that you could imagine?
Oh man.
Literally flashy, probably like being nuclear bombed.
Uh-huh. Fia, do you have a guess here?
No, not any that are not very dark.
Well, I mean, the good news is that you don't really have to have one because Gavin's 100% right.
Hey.
Oh no.
Talking about nuclear bombs. So now, why? Oh no! Like, what? We haven't even
Oh.
started my portion of this.
Because I know of, and I think I've been to actually a couple of sites where some nuclear mistakes have happened. And I'm sure Mike is going to tell us much more about them.
Yes. So, I had always assumed for a very long time that, when it came to nuclear weapons, that these were, very safeguarded and the procedures were, very rigorous. And, if one of these is going to go off, like it is going off for a reason. It is going off because a number of people all, gave the thumbs up and a number of things were checked. As it turns out, no, that's not how this works at all.
Right.
No, not at all.
Mm-mm.
Or at the very least, that's not how it worked for a long time. Today, we are going to be talking, and this is going to be, as is the case with most of my episodes, not a particularly long episode, but I'd like to talk with you guys about something called broken arrows. Now, that's a term, I believe that's a Department of Defense term. It is, it's an adorable little term, and if you didn't know anything about it, I considered beginning this episode with just what do you two think broken arrows are without me giving you a definition. But what they are is they are nuclear, essentially nuclear accidents. A broken arrow refers to an accidental event that involves nuclear weapons, warheads, or components, but it does not create the risk of nuclear war.
Nice.
There are different terms. There's a term called pinnacle and a bent spear, but the kind of the one that gets talked about the most are these broken arrow incidents that just you read about these things and you're like, oh dear God, the fate of the world is hinged upon so little, so often. And so at some point, one of my interests for a while has been, and I may have talked about this on the podcast at some point. At some point in the 80s, there was a like a cloud that went in front of a nuclear detection satellite, and the Soviets were ready to launch nukes back at the United States because they thought they were being attacked. And there was one guy who said, no, like, this is a mistake. And that one guy prevented, essentially nuclear war from beginning.
Yeah.
And he was punished for that, for going against his officers, even though the dude literally prevented nuclear war.
Right.
And at some point I might want to talk more about that. But today we're just talking about some whoopsie daisies that actually took place.
Oh,
And
dear.
so
Cool,
I'm going to
cool.
quickly run through like one or two whoopsie daisies, just kind of in general to give you a sense as to what we're talking about here. And then there's one that I want to talk about in particular. And Gavin, the one I'm going to talk about in particular may be one that you have been to. Um, the the first known broken arrow. By the way, there have been, according to the DoD, publicly there are 32 kind of recognized incidents. A private report has detailed a several hundred.
Which,
Mm.
just to think about that for just a minute,
Right.
the official number is 32.
Right. The number
Yeah.
that's out there.
If you were to ask Joe Schmo off the street, how many times have nuclear mistakes happen, and are all of these on American soil, the ones that you were talking about?
No, not all of them.
Okay, but with American nukes?
I believe these are all American, or like American adjacent. Although I have not gone through every incident. The Americans are involved in.
Non-Soviet.
Yeah, Americans are involved in quite a few numbers of these.
But if you were to ask Joe Schmo off the street, roughly how many times has I almost said New York, the U.S. or its allies almost nuked themselves? I bet most people would not come close. I bet they wouldn't even say double digits.
Yeah,
honestly.
I was thinking like 5.
I mean, I think if you were like phrased it in a certain way, I think most people would be like, "Well, never." Like that's ridiculous. And Gavin,
Right? Yeah.
Gavin, I appreciate that you said nuke themselves, because that's kind of what we're talking about. We're not even talking about like over, like Antarctica. A lot of times, many of these occurred on American soil. So,
Oh yeah.
so let's begin with one here that did not happen on American soil. The very first known broken arrow occurred in 1950. And there was a B-36 plane that was in the air, and the aircraft, after 6 hours of flight, developed some mechanical difficulties, and they had to shut down the engines. The problem was that it was 12,000 feet in the air.
Oh
Oh
gosh.
jeez.
Right, and
Yeah.
it was really icy out. They couldn't land properly, and so the plane heads out over the Pacific Ocean, drops the weapon over the ocean from 8,000 feet, and they reported that a bright flash occurred on impact. And
Oh god.
Which, like, granted, it was the 50s. Technology wasn't
Yeah. Okay, so
great.
I have a
per se.
question.
yes,
So for the people not experienced in nuclear bomb history, do you know when nuclear bombs were first invented?
yes. So the Manhattan Project began during World War II. That um, you know that was the first attempt to try and split atoms for kind of war purposes. This sort of begins with Enrico Fermi and then Robert Oppenheimer, and it's sort of just by coincidence that kind of right at the end of World War II, the first nuclear bombs were ready. Those were hydrogen bombs, Little Boy
Mhm.
and Fat Man, that were detonated over Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Those were the first ones that were actually used in war. So we are talking about 1945 is when nuclear bomb technology becomes viable.
So we had a good 5-year span of
Yeah.
no whoopsie daisies.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean,
That we know
Yeah,
of.
true.
right, that we know of. And part of the thing is, in those first couple of years, there just wasn't that many nuclear bombs.
Right,
Part
yeah.
of the reason, this is not the only reason, but part of the reason that there was not a third bomb dropped on Japan at that point was a third bomb was not yet available. There was a third, there was plans for a third bomb. There would have been a third bomb, but it would have taken somewhere between days to weeks to actually, get that up and running. Versus now the tens of thousands of nuclear weapons that are available at a moment's notice.
Mhm.
So there just wasn't that many. And when you begin to increase the numbers of anything, you're going to increase the number of mistakes, and that includes,
True.
that includes nuclear weapons. There are a great many more of these. A B-57 based on a U.S. airport base in England, reportedly loaded with a nuclear weapon, caught fire and completely burned. 1958. In
Nice.
1960, signs of high-level radioactive contamination were detected around that base by a group of scientists working on the Atomic Weapons Research Establishment. The U.S. government has never confirmed whether the accident involved a nuclear warhead. I have a guess. I have an assumption on that one.
Yeah.
I am getting this information, by the way, up to this point from a website called atomicarchive.com, which has a list of the 32 known broken arrow events.
Cool.
So
we'll have that down in the show notes.
Absolutely, and I'll make sure to send that to you guys. The one that I would like to talk about today, though, I think this is the most famous broken arrow event. When I say most famous, I would say the vast majority of people do not know about this. But in 1961, in Goldsboro, North Carolina.
Yep, this is not the one that I've been to.
Okay.
But it is one that I have heard of. Yeah.
Yes. Which ones have you been to? Now I'm curious.
I don't. Now that I'm thinking about it more and actually looked it up while you were explaining nuclear history to Fia, but I went to the Minuteman Missile National Monument.
Okay.
Or National Historic Site, I think, in South Dakota, which still obviously it's decommissioned. There are not active missiles being stored there, but it is a missile silo, because those were just kind of sprinkled around very rural parts of like Wyoming and Montana and the Dakotas during like the height of the Cold War. And you can like schedule, you can't just show up and do it, but you can like schedule ahead of time, like guided tours. Like you can go like in the silo where there is like a full size mock missile in there. And it was utterly terrifying. We didn't do the tour part, but they have all sorts of displays about just like how terrifying just existing throughout the Cold War was.
I mean, one of my favorite things to do with my students when I teach them about the Cold War is, as we're doing notes, I will input 2 or 3 different times in my PowerPoint where all of a sudden a siren just goes off and they have to climb under their desks.
Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah.
You really do that?
Yeah. Fia, you've known me long enough now. Of course you know.
All right. That's fair.
One of the things I take great pride in is terrorizing my students. And
in a good way.
Usually, or at least I'd like to think so.
For legal reasons, in a good way.
Yeah, right. It's educational. It's all for a greater good, something along those lines. So the kind of famous nuclear incident, the 1961 Goldsboro incident. And so this takes place obviously in January 1961. Actually, it was I believe it was the 23rd of January. So just a couple days ago from when we're recording this, and about a week and a half ago from when you guys are hearing this. What ends up happening is the United States had this plan. This is the 1960s now. JFK is president. JFK gives his inauguration speech just a couple days before this, actually. The United States had been kind of operating under this plan. They were always going to have nuclear weapons in the air. So that way, in case they were needed, they were ready to go at a moment's notice.
Mm-hmm.
Like 24/7?
24/7, 365 was the plan. And these, for the record, the BBC has a great video about this particular incident, which again we'll include in the show notes. And what happened was that this there was this plane that was kind of doing circles around the Atlantic Ocean. It would it would fly out to Europe and fly back and fly to Europe and fly back. And it does this twice. And then it was going to be refueled in the air, which sounds crazy, but this is a thing that a lot of military planes are equipped to do. Air Force One, very famously, can do this. They can be refueled in the air and can theoretically just be in the air in perpetuity. The only thing that is keeping there is the amount of food and water available on the plane for for the crew. And so, after making a couple trips across the ocean, this plane needs to be refueled, as you do. And as it's being refueled, something gets damaged on the wing of the plane. All of a sudden, like something is off. The plane that's refueling alerts the other pilot, and they try to figure out what's going on, try to land the plane. It's becoming very clear that the pilot will not be able to control the plane down. Like, it is just going down. And
Oh
so
boy.
what ends up happening is a number of the crew, 5 crew, ejected out of the aircraft. Another 3 of them wind up dying. There was, I think, 1 person that ejected but didn't survive, and 2 more just like went down with the plane. So 3 people wound up dying in this. And in addition, while in the air, the 2 nuclear missiles that were in the plane just got dropped.
Oh no.
And they take two different paths down. One of them fell, and the parachute deployed like
Yep.
it's supposed to. And it starts going through what was described in this video as sort of a checklist of, am I at the right location? Am I, out of the plane? Am I falling at the proper speed? Am I at the proper height? And it goes down all these checklists, and it gets to the final one. And the final checklist was a little switch that was turned. You could be either turned into the arm position or the safe position, just like the safety on a gun. And the safety on this was turned on, thank God. And the bomb does not go off, and it just kind of lands peacefully next to a tree in Goldsboro.
Wow.
You say wow to that. I haven't told you about the second bomb yet. So that is sort of an example of things like working the way they are supposed to. Where there was a mistake and like, oh boy, that's not good, but there was a failsafe. The other missile, something went wrong. The parachute did not deploy properly when it went down.
Quick interjection.
Yeah.
What year did you say this was again?
1961.
Okay. For reference, Goldsboro had a population of give or take 28,000 people or so at the time.
Do you know how many they have now? Do you happen to have that information?
More. About 33, 34.
Wonderful. So, about 1.5 times the population now. And so the other one falls. The parachute does not deploy, and it just gets buried into like this muddy area in Goldsboro. And so eventually they have to go recover the field. It plunged into a muddy field at 700 miles per hour and disintegrated without detonation of the explosive. So, spoiler alert, there was no detonation. Everything was good. The tail was discovered. Part of the bomb has never been recovered. And to this day, farmers in the area, they can't dig more than 5 feet down, and the water is continuously monitored for any signs of radiation. There has never been any sign that there's been any radiation, but still, we don't know where some of it is.
Yeah.
In 2013, some of the report about this got declassified. In 2013, one of the people that was trying to find this bomb recalled the moment that the second bomb's switch was found. It had the same one of these switches, the arm safe. Until my death, I will never forget hearing my sergeant say, "Lieutenant, we found the arm safe switch." And I said, "Great." He said, "Not great. It's on arm."
Oh no.
So this bomb was armed, was ready to go off. So something went wrong here on 2 counts. Number 1, the bomb was armed when it shouldn't have been.
Yeah.
And number 2, this bomb was dropped and theoretically should have gone off. So the bombs that were being made at this point, were clearly not up to proper standards, because theoretically this bomb should have gone off.
Yeah.
And had it gone off, there would have been, I've seen different estimates from, I think 8 to 17 miles, where there'd be essentially a 100% kill radius. There would be nuclear radiation going as far north as New York City. It would have been, again, absolutely catastrophic. And who only knows what would have happened? This is categorized as a broken arrow event, which the Department of Defense says, are nuclear mistakes that do not pose the threat of nuclear war. And I would just like to be in 1961 in the Oval Office, brand new, youngest elected president ever, not the youngest president ever, but the youngest president ever elected has just taken office. And he finds out there's been a nuclear blow-up in the United States. Are we 100% sure that there isn't going to be immediate retaliation against the Soviet Union for something they did not do? I don't know.
Yeah.
I certainly don't know what the protocol is. Fortunately, none of that happened. The one bomb that had the parachutes was recovered. The other one that plummeted into the mud was mostly recovered, and the piece that has not been found is still out there somewhere, and theoretically could cause problems, although has not to this point. And in 2012, North Carolina erects a historical marker of that mistake. It says nuclear mishap at the top. B-52
No.
transporting B-52 transporting 2 nuclear bombs crashed January 1961. Widespread disaster averted. 3 crewmen died. Which is a little more matter of fact than I may have put it, but then again,
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not in charge of making signs for the public good, which is again probably for the best.
Yeah. That's just a fancy way of saying whoopsie daisy.
Whoops-a-daisy indeed. And that is, again, there are many more of these incidents, and I don't feel like there's any need to go through each and every one of them. But this is more just a PSA to everybody listening that
We are never safe.
we are never safe. Nuclear mistakes are a thing that has happened, and given how humans and mistakes tend to work, will likely happen again. Fortunately, none of these mistakes have caused any kind of widespread panic. I don't want to gloss over the fact that people have lost their lives because of planes going down and things like that. But in this particular case, 3 people died, and not thousands or millions. And I am trying to think here, when nuclear war breaks out, when that nuclear fireball rips the flesh from our skeleton, would I rather it be a mistake, or would I rather it be an act of war? And I'm gonna fall asleep tonight thinking about that question.
Thanks, Mike.
To answer the question I asked at the beginning, the flashiest way I want to die, it's going to be a nuclear fireball, but will it be on purpose or will it be a mistake? And that is a question.
If anybody's gonna nuke me, it's gonna be me.
Yeah, right. It's going to be the Americans. If there's anyone that's going to kill me with nukes, it's going to be the Americans.
Tonight's nightmare episode brought to you by Mike.
Mike's Nightmare episode, also been Mike's Mike Takes the Wheel Volume 9, and this has been episode 105 of I Wish You Were Dead, a podcast about things that used to be alive. Thank you all for going on this journey with me. We'll be back with a regularly scheduled episode about sponges next week, but until then, take care, everybody.
This episode of I Wish You Were Dead was written by Mike Bryson and hosted by Gavin Davidson, Mike Bryson, and Fenella Campanino. It was sound edited and edited for YouTube by Gavin Davidson. Special thanks to former guests of the pod and to listeners like you.